Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. His call hit while my door lock clicked. Cover me tonight or everything burns. No greeting, no cushion, just that threat. My hand stayed on the key like it might help. I knew this wasn't a favor anymore. I'm Evan, 27. I'd already lied once and tasted metal. My voice worked now but felt rented. "Where are you?" I asked because the silence pressed. He exhaled like he owned my next breath. Outside, a shadow crossed the peephole. I opened because not opening felt worse. Marius brushed past and killed the hallway noise. He held two phones like loaded switches. One of them lit with Lucia's name. He raised a finger for quiet. "Your story and my story must match." His jaw flexed through a brittle grin. "Say we watched the match at your place." Every word clipped like wire. "Which match?" I asked because precision mattered now. He blinked a beat too long. "City against them, late goal," we yelled. He shoved the second phone into my palm. "Answer if she calls, keep it clean." My screen buzzed before I could swallow. Lucia's message popped up short and surgical. "What minute changed the game?" her text read. She knew to test the small seams first. My fingers hovered and picked a number. Marius watched like a coach who bets heavy. He nodded once and paced a tight square. "Stick to that thought," he murmured without warmth. He peered at my door like it might talk. I realized he feared the hallway more than me. "Who was she?" I asked because lies grow names. He smirked instead of answering and rested his weight. "Not your detail," he flicked his gaze upward. "Your job is alibi," in calm voice. My pulse ignored both assignments at once. Lucia called, the room shrank to breath and glass. I put her on speaker because my hands shook. "Was he with you after midnight?" Her voice steadied. I stared at Marius and saw nothing human. "Yes," I said and felt my ribs tighten. She paused long enough to measure tremors. "Tell me one thing you ate." My mouth dried because we ate nothing. Leftover noodles, I tried and winced. Silence returned heavier than before. A new message landed as the call died. A clip short, grainy enough. Marius leaving a door with someone close. Timestamp said midnight on the dot. My excuse failed before it reached air. He leaned over the counter like he owned it. "You will keep this simple," he muttered without blinking. "If you choke, I cough up your secrets." He tapped the back of my phone twice. The threat sat there like a loaded icon. I pictured my boss reading a rumor. My sister getting dragged into someone else's mess. I pictured myself alone in a worse kitchen. I pictured Lucia staring at proof and waiting. I realized this path had only cliffs ahead. "Then we record rules," I said to Stahl. Marius lifted a brow and laughed once. "Rules are easy, you obey and breathe." I opened my notes and wrote nothing. A different plan started whispering under the noise. Lucia texted again with surgical timing. "Come outside in 5, no calls." I read it twice and felt my choice harden. Marius checked the peephole and frowned. He sensed movement the way sharks taste blood. "I need air," I said and pointed at water. He waved me off without looking. 2 minutes, he said and pocketed both phones. He believed I wouldn't run on him. That belief almost saved me. The hallway carried every sound like gossip. I stepped out and pulled the door halfway. Lucia waited near the stairwell with steady eyes. She lifted her own phone and didn't smile. "Can you keep your voice steady now?" I nodded because talking felt expensive. She held up the clip again and watched me. "Tell me your truth while he listens," she whispered. Her thumb hovered over record like a trigger. I heard movement behind my door. Marius called my name through clenched teeth. His tone told me which version he wanted. My stomach turned and then quieted. I leaned close to Lucia and breathed once. "It ends tonight," I said because fear finally bored me. She tapped record and kept the lens down. The door opened and Marius filled the frame. He didn't see the phone, he saw me. "Say it," he urged with bright fury. I felt myself choose a different life. I stepped into the frame and blocked him. Lucia's hand dipped, screen still face down. "Repeat your rule," I told him, steady now. His mouth curled, breath quick, eyes glittering. He moved closer until our shoes touched. "You obey or you drown," his knuckle tapped my chest. "Your story is my story forever." Lucia's eyelids barely flickered and the mic drank. I didn't flinch, I counted heartbeats. He smelled trouble and squared his shoulders. "Walk back inside," he brushed past my arm. Lucia stayed near the stairs, calm and focused. My hinge creaked and the latch clicked behind us. He planted both mobiles on the counter like trophies. "Now rehearse," he ordered with a tight grin. I lifted one handset and hit speak. "Lord." The recent call list glowed with her name. "Practice makes it smooth," he murmured, palms open. I repeated his script word for word. I added one detail he never fed me. His head tilted, suspicion rising fast. "Where did you get that extra part?" I pointed at my head like it was memory. He didn't buy it, he paced once. Lucia texted me a single dot, "Go." I set the handset down and exhaled. "No more practice," I told him, voice lower. He laughed and reached for my shoulder. I stepped aside and let his hand miss. He hated the miss more than the no. "Your career depends on me," his lip twitched. He listed names he could pull into mud. Each name landed like a flare in darkness. I heard shoes in the hallway pause. We had ears now, maybe witnesses. "Leave," I said and pointed at the entry. He froze, then smiled without warmth. "You don't push me out of anywhere." He grabbed the nearest chair and blocked passage. His foot hooked the leg like a trap. I leaned over the backrest and whispered. "Lucia is listening," I told him, pulse even. He blinked, then barked a laugh that cracked. "You two think recordings bait me." He swung the chair aside and stepped up. I raised my mobile and pressed play. His own threat spilled into the cramped room. He watched his words cage him in real time. He swallowed and tried to smirk again. The smirk died before it reached skin. He lunged, fingers snatching at my wrist. I twisted free and he hit the wall. Lucia knocked once, quick, precise, decisive. He stiffened at the sound and backed up. I felt the path open under my feet. I moved to the peephole and spoke loud. "Come in," I called, keeping the lens covered. He grabbed both handsets and stuffed his pockets. Lucia entered and stopped one pace away. Her stare pinned him like a nail. "End it," she told him, tone flat as stone. He spread his hands, a show of innocence. "Nothing to end," he tried, voice gone thin. She held up her screen and pressed play. His earlier line filled the space again. He flared and hissed through his teeth. "You're not sending that anywhere." He took one step and I matched him. Lucia slid along the wall and held steady. "Three bodies, one choice, no more secrets." "Pick," I kept my voice level and slow. "Walk out or hear your name on speaker." He scanned us like angles on a board. His shoulders dropped a fraction and then tensed. He lunged again but stopped short of impact. Lucia lifted her thumb and hovered. "I'm one tap away," she warned without blinking. He exhaled and turned the knob halfway. "Last chance," he muttered with a crooked grin. I didn't answer, I held the stare. He slipped into the hallway and paused. You'll regret this soon, he tossed over his shoulder. The door shut and cut the threat in half. Lucia leaned against it and finally breathed. My hands shook, but a different kind of shake. We're not safe yet, I told her, eyes on the lock. She nodded and forwarded the audio to herself. She forwarded it again to someone on her list. I watched the progress bar crawl and finish. Insurance clicked into place like a loaded plan. She asked for the borrowed minute that broke him. I gave her the detail I invented earlier. She raised an eyebrow, impressed and wary. We need clean facts from now on. I agreed because the next part would cost more. Her screen buzzed with an unknown number. A voice asked to meet downstairs quickly. Witness from the hall, she mouthed, pulse fast. We looked at each other and understood. This wasn't over, it was finally moving. We hit the stairs fast, hearts pacing the count. Lucia kept her cell low and armed. A man waited by the mailboxes with crossed arms. Third floor, he whispered, eyes on the elevator. He grabbed your wrist and swore revenge, I filmed. He lifted his own device and glanced around. I felt heat rise and then settle into focus. You'll share that with us, Lucia asked without blinking. He nodded once and tucked it away again. After I get one promise, no names. The elevator dinged and I flinched on instinct. The doors parted and nobody stepped out. We stayed still, listening for steps above. My gut said Marius hadn't left the building. Paranoia can lie, but it also keeps bones intact. Let's move, Lucia urged, voice barely above breath. We crossed to the manager's office and knocked. The latch turned slow, like someone bracing for drama. The superintendent peered out and read our faces. Noise complaint or police, he asked, hand on the frame. Evidence, Lucia answered, chin up and calm. We need the lobby cameras pulled now. He hesitated, then waved us inside with a shrug. Show me something worth my job, he muttered. I opened the audio file and let it run 10 seconds. The lines played clear enough to draw blood. The superintendent stared at the desk for a beat. Copy that to a drive, he ordered under his breath. Keep your copies off cloud, trust me. Like how GHT Lucia's look and understood the warning. A vibration hit my pocket and I checked reflexively. Unknown number, short message, 2 words. Back door, nothing else, no punctuation. I showed Lucia and the witness tightened his jaw. He's trying to pull you outside alone, the man said. We didn't debate long because hesitation kills leverage. I typed a reply with an empty tone. 2 minutes, then I locked the cell again. Lucia clipped her hair behind an ear and nodded. We use the camera, not courage, she whispered. The superintendent printed a paper with a code. Scan this for access to the feed. He slid it over and kept his voice flat. I never gave you anything if anyone asks. He watched the hallway like thunder might roll in. We stepped out and moved toward the rear exit. The witness hung back with his device ready. Lucia's sneakers barely scuffed the tile as we turned. The corridor funneled us into a narrow choke point. Adrenaline makes everything crisp and loud inside your skull. The door swung inward before we could touch it. Marius filled the gap with a calculated grin. No companion, no bluster, just clean intent. Give me the files and we forget this. His gaze flicked between our hands like a scanner. Lucia raised her palms as if disarming a bomb. Trade, she offered, eyes locked on his. You return my keys and your backup disappears. He patted a pocket and showed nothing. He wanted us to feel empty before the swing. Last shot, he murmured, stepping just inside. Truth or fallout, your pick. I shifted my stance and drew his attention left. Lucia reached behind and tapped the wall reader twice. The hallway camera woke with a quiet chirp. He heard it and spun toward the lens. For a second, he forgot to act harmless. That second dragged just long enough for proof. I pointed up and let silence do the talking. He reset his face, but the crack had formed. Walk away, I told him, voice even and cold. You're already on the building system now. He laughed once, too sharp for charm. Cameras get erased when friends make calls. He lifted his cell and thumbed a contact. Lucia moved first and knocked his wrist sideways. The device skittered across the floor and stopped. He grabbed for it and I blocked with my forearm. Enough, I barked and felt control return. He froze, weighing angles that shrank by the second. The witness stepped forward with his own lens raised. No more shadows, he warned, stance compact and firm. Marius blinked, then calculated a retreat route. He adjusted his jacket and forced a nod. Enjoy your little movie, he whispered through clenched teeth. He backed out into the alley and vanished right. Lucia exhaled slowly and pocketed her cell again. The witness looked at us like we'd stolen sleep. Upload that feed before someone pulls the plug. We moved together toward the stairwell with urgency. Back in the office, we scanned the code quickly. Clips populated a grid like targets waiting. We tagged the moments that mattered with timestamps. Marius's face, his lunge, the wrist grab, everything. The superintendent watched the door and tapped his foot. Police now, Lucia said, no tremor this time. Her eyes met mine and held there. I felt the old guilt try to crawl back. I stepped on it and chose a cleaner road. The call connected and the line rang once. The dispatcher picked up and asked our location. Lucia gave the address while I watched the hall. Threats, evidence, suspect nearby, she kept it short. Stay inside and keep doors secured, the operator said. We hung up and braced for knock and siren. The superintendent locked the office and checked the corridor. Units en route, he murmured with a stiff jaw. The witness filmed from the doorway without flinching. I scrubbed through the clips and flagged 3 moments. Every second mattered if someone tried a wipe. Footsteps pounded the stairwell like an approaching drill. The witness flattened against the wall with phone high. 2 neighbors peered around the bend and froze. Back in your apartments, Lucia urged with a gesture. They retreated fast, doors thudding like nervous hearts. A text from an unknown number flashed. Bad move calling cops, it read, blunt and cold. I showed Lucia and felt my throat go tight. Not him, she whispered, eyes narrowing with calculation. He has help, at least one. The elevator chimed and opened on us. No one stood inside, but a jacket lay crumpled. Nothing else, just that decoy like a lure. The superintendent kicked it back and frowned. Check pockets later, not now. Knuckles rapped once at the lobby glass. A uniform stared in and waved for access. The superintendent buzzed them through and stepped aside. 2 officers entered with clipped movements and direct eyes. Who placed the emergency call? Lucia raised her hand and pointed at me. Primary target left through the rear exit. I played the audio and then He hallway footage. They exchanged glances that looked like quiet agreement. We need statements and a copy of everything. The witness swallowed and lifted his device. I recorded the wrist grab near the mail slots. He airdropped the file to their tablet without hesitation. The clip played and the room went very still. We'll need him detained before he scrubs his trail. A crash erupted past the office door and echoed. Not furniture, not steps, something deliberate and fast. The officers drew attention toward the hallway in sync. Everyone remained inside and away from the entrance. I tasted adrenaline and held my ground. The security feed blinked once and froze. The superintendent swore under his breath and lunged. Server room is in the basement, he said. Lucia's gaze hit mine and then the stairs. If someone pulled power, our proof could vanish. We split, she suggested with a hard nod. One with them, one with the cameras. An officer blocked us with a raised palm. Together, we move as a group. We filed out fast and kept shoulders tight. The basement door fought us with a sticky hinge. A heavy thud sounded from the far corner. "Announce yourselves," the officer called with command. Silence answered, and then something skittered away. I recognized how fear creates tricks and also instincts. We rounded the turn and saw the panel open. A cable dangled cut and ugly next to conduit. The other officer swept the room and signaled clear. Lucia pressed her lips together and held steady. I thought about 5 ways this could flip. Power remains, but the recorder might be compromised. The superintendent crouched and inspected the damage. Local cache exists upstairs on my workstation. He stood and wiped his hands on denim. Move the files now or lose them. We hustled back with the officers lading. The hallway smelled like cord insulation burning faintly. At the office door, a shape blocked our path. A figure in a hood reached for the knob. He twisted once and then noticed us. He bolted toward the exit without looking back. One officer sprinted and cut him off. The other closed from the side with practiced speed. The hood stumbled and caught a shin on metal. He hit the floor and cursed through clenched teeth. Hands where we can see them. Plastic restraints clicked, quick and final. The hood glared at us and spat. "Delete your copies or he comes for you." The officer hauled him upright with controlled force. Lucia stared at the captive and leaned close. "Who sent you?" she asked with a still gaze. The hood laughed and looked toward the street. "I don't answer to strangers," he sneered. He went quiet when the tablet screen faced him. The officer played the threat from earlier again. The hood's expression collapsed into dawning worry. "Never heard that before," he attempted without conviction. He flicked his eyes to the ceiling and exhaled. He knew the wall was closing from both sides. We piled into the office and shut the door. The superintendent unlocked a drawer and pulled a drive. He began the transfer with brisk keystrokes and focus. The progress bar crawled like a stubborn insect. Every percent felt like a coin drop into survival. A familiar voice floated from the corridor. Not loud, not frantic, just confident and cruel. "Open up for a quick chat." Lucia's shoulders squared while mine pulled tight. We both recognized that voice without doubt. The officers exchanged a glance and repositioned. They signaled us to stay behind the desk. One cracked the door and peered into the gap. The voice continued, playful and sharp as glass. "Bring your manager and the tape. Step into view with your hands visible." Silence stretched for a count of 5. Leather creaked, then a slow clap followed. Footsteps receded toward the lobby with swagger. "Front door then," the voice tossed back. We held our breath and listened for movement. The transfer hit 80% and edged higher. Lucia gripped my wrist and whispered one word. "Focus." It grounded me better than air. I kept my eyes on the numbers. A sharp clang rang from the entrance vestibule. The second officer radioed for an additional unit. Possible breach attempt at main access. The superintendent handed me the finished drive. "Duplicate to your email when you can." 96%, 98 complete. He yanked the cable and slipped the drive into cloth. We stacked backup on backup without speaking long. Redundancy felt like the only prayer left. My spine loosened an inch and held. A new knock rattled the glass in 2 bursts. Different rhythm, different weight, different plan. Delivery, a voice chirped with false cheer. The officer shook his head and lifted a palm. "Not today," he muttered, setting his stance. Lucia leaned toward me with a quiet resolve. This ends when he loses control, not before. I knew she was right and hated the timeline. My phone buzzed again with a single line. Rooftop, the message read, "Come alone." I almost laughed at the audacity masked as charm. Lucia read it upside down and nodded once. "We choose the opposite of alone," she whispered. The officer listened and swiped his radio open. "Team to roof access now." We moved as a unit toward the stairwell. Boots climbed in disciplined cadence while we followed. The witness kept pace and filmed from the rear. Every landing brought another potential ambush point. I felt fear and used it like a rail. At the final door, the officer paused and listened. A faint scrape arrived from somewhere above. He raised 2 fingers and eased the latch open. We stepped through into wind and concrete edges. Shadows framed a figure near the parapet. He turned slowly with hands out from pockets. No panic, only calculation and a smirk. Brave crowd for a private meeting. Lucia edged left and cut his angle. The officers fanned right with measured patience. "I offered you a graceful ending," he called. "Now you earn the hard one." His gaze slid to the sty. Our well camera lens. He kept the smirk, but his eyes darted. He had no exit that avoided an audience. "Hands behind your head," the officer ordered. He laughed and stepped toward the ledge. My stomach tightened and memory tried to drag me. I took 1 step forward and spoke clearly. "No more performances, we record everything." He looked at me like I'd broken a secret. Something shook in him and then hardened again. "Then film this," he snarled and reached backward. The roof door slammed behind us with a gust. I braced for the last ugly choice to arrive. His hand flashed behind him and found metal. A small bar scraped free from the ledge mount. He swung low toward the closest officer's knee. I stepped in and caught his forearm hard. Bone met bone and the bar clattered away. "Back up," the officer barked with clipped control. Marius fainted left and rushed the parapet. Lucia cut the angle and forced him wide. The second officer raised cuffs without hesitation. He twisted away and aimed for the stairwell. I blocked the path with both arms high. "Enough games," I told him, breath steady. He raked my sleeve and tried a shove. I held ground and felt the shake pass. I was done being steered by fear. He pivoted and reached for his pocket. Lucia moved in and pinned his wrist. A dull click sounded as metal touched skin. He fought harder when the first cuff closed. The other officer hooked the second loop fast. "On your knees," came the command, flat and solid. He bucked once and threw his shoulder back. We braced and rode the surge down. He froze when the witness stepped through. A lens hovered inches from his face. "Everyone sees this," I told him, calm and clear. He stared at me like I'd broken faith. "You were nothing without my silence." I let the words stand without flinching. Truth felt heavier than any grip. The radio crackled and confirmed patrol below. "Bring him down," the voice instructed, direct and brief. We formed a tight box and moved together. Marius kept testing the chain with little jerks. Each tug lost another inch of control. At the stairhead, he slowed and turned sly. "Cut me loose and I fix your mess." Lucia answered with a look that cut deeper. "You created the mess," she told him, unwavering. The witness filmed his eyes, searching for exits. 2 floors down, a figure waited near the landing. The hood from earlier, jaw set, pupils darting. He saw the cuffs and froze mid-step. Then he bolted upward, fast and reckless. The first officer chased and vanished around the bend. We kept the pace and guarded our captive. He tried to trip me with a heel hook. I shoved him into the rail with controlled force. He yelped once and stopped trying dumb tricks. He finally understood the audience had grown. We hit the lobby where uniforms lined the glass. A sergeant opened space and waved us through. "Any weapons?" she asked, eyes on his hands. "Improvised bar on the roof," I answered. She nodded and scanned him for more surprises. They turned him toward the wall with practiced rhythm. He breathed through his teeth and stared at me. "You'll crawl when this turns," he promised softly. I looked at Lucia and spoke for both. "We're done crawling, we walk forward now." The sergeant looked to us for a quick summary. Lucia shared the clips with calm precision. Audio hall footage, rooftop attempt. The sergeant watched enough to lock her stance. "Transport is outside," she concluded with final weight. They led him toward the exit in measured steps. He twisted his head for one last jab. "All of this falls apart in daylight." I lifted the drive so he could see it. Daylight is exactly where this goes. The doors opened and the street swallowed sound. He ducked into the vehicle and kept glaring. The hooded accomplice screamed from the stairwell above. The chasing officer wrestled him into view. Both were loaded in separate cars without ceremony. The lobby exhaled as the vehicles rolled. Neighbors drifted from thresholds with cautious eyes. The superintendent rubbed his temples and watched us. "You two need copies off-site," he advised. We nodded because paranoia now counted as wisdom. We returned to the office and duplicated everything. Local drive, cloud vault, private archive. The witness sent his clip to the same folder. "Anonymous drop," he muttered and toggled the setting. His gaze held mine like a quiet pact. Lucia's phone rang with a clear tone. Unknown caller, firm voice, businesslike cadence. "Come by the station for statements," the voice requested. She glanced at me and then the witness. "We'll be there," she answered and ended the call. On the walk out, she stayed close but silent. We passed the back exit and halted in sync. A single screw lay by the frame, fresh. He had planned more than one move tonight. I felt the tremor return and then fade. "Tell the truth from start to finish," she said. "No edits, no helpful embellishments." I nodded and finally believed my own spine. Lying had felt like quicksand in nice shoes. Honesty felt like gravel, rough but solid. We stepped into the night that finally listened. My phone pulsed with a final text ping. A new number, clipped sentence, unmistakable tone. "There are others," the message warned, nothing more. I looked at Lucia and understood the next chapter waited. I called back the unknown number and let it ring. A voice I didn't know whispered a street name. "Walk alone or the files disappear." Click. Lucia watched my face and tightened her grip. We headed for the station anyway, together. The desk officer took our devices and logged them. "Interviews in 5, he said, pen scratching forms. I felt the old tremor try to start. I breathed once and kept my shoulders squared. We were past bargaining nights, finally. A detective stepped in with a line briefcase. He nodded at the monitor and pressed play. Our clips rolled one by one without commentary. His eyes tracked every frame like a metronome. "Clear enough for charges," he said at last. "Anyone else involved?" he asked, eyes on me. I slid my phone across and opened the text. He photographed the message and traced the number. "Unregistered relay, likely a mule," he muttered. I felt heat rise, then settle into resolve. He split us for statements behind separate doors. Inside, he clicked a recorder and leaned back. "Start at the stairwell and stay chronological." I walked him through the beats without polish. Each sentence cost energy, but returned control. Halfway through, a knock rattled the glass pane. The detective checked his watch and stood. "Sit tight," he said, then slipped outside. Through the slit, I saw uniforms converge fast. Something hit the lobby, pressure shifted like weather. I stepped out and found chaos organized. Two officers flanked a new detainee in cuffs. My stomach dropped when he lifted his chin. The hood from earlier stared straight at me. "Lawyer," he barked, then looked past everything. "Who contacted you?" the detective asked without ceremony. The hood smirked and tilted his head left. A man in a blazer hovered by reception. He held a card like a badge substitute. "Counsel," the blazer announced with polished confidence. Lucia joined me and watched the exchange closely. The detective lowered his voice and kept it tight. "Counsel waits while we book the assault." The blazer smiled politely and set his briefcase down. Pressure swirled, but the line held steady. A clerk waved us toward a quiet alcove. "Digital forensics needs your drive now." We followed the tech into a side room. He cloned our archive with quick, practiced motions. "Air-gapped mirror," he explained, eyes never leaving progress. While the copy ran, my phone buzzed again. New number, new threat dressed as instruction. "Retract your statement before morning or your boss learns everything." They kept betting on shame like it was currency. I was done paying in silence, completely done. The detective returned with a folder and a sigh. "Your guy is calling friends from holding," he reported. "Not many left who answer, but some do." Lucia folded her arms and met his look. "We aren't the weak link anymore," she said. A second tech rolled in a portable printer. Images emerged, stills from the lobby and roof. One frame froze on his hand, gripping my wrist. Another caught the bar above the parapet. Each print went into a labeled sleeve, evidence sealed. Time for a formal statement on video. They arranged lights and pointed a camera my way. I faced the lens and chose clean language. No extra color, no filler, no spin. The truth carried its own sharp edges. After mine, Lucia recorded her account with crisp certainty. She detailed the threats and the alley message. She added the screw by the back door. The detective scribbled a note and nodded once. Patterns clicked into place. There was a network. An officer stepped in with a new update. "Your superintendent's server shows 2 remote attempts." The tech traced the origin on a map. A tiny dot pulsed from a parking space nearby. The detective closed his folder and made a call. "Quick trip," he said, waving for 2 units. He looked at us and weighed the risk. "You stay here, safer inside these walls." Lucia touched my shoulder and answered for both. "Do what you need, we'll be ready." We waited while the clock crawled with stubborn pride. The hood stared at the floor and hummed. The blazer paced and checked messages in cycles. The room felt like a drawn bow refusing release. I anchored to breath and held the line. The door swung and the detective strode back. He dropped a new phone on the counter. Same relay, same contact tree, same names. He nodded to the booking officer with relief. The circle had shrunk to something manageable. "Charges filed," the sergeant announced from the desk. "Extortion, obstruction, assault, tampering." The list sounded heavy and finally earned. Lucia let out a breath that trembled once. I felt my spine lengthen like a rope pulled straight. The blazer tried one last maneuver with poise. "My client will make a statement tomorrow." The detective didn't blink or move an inch. "Your client will make it from a cell." The blazer pocketed his card and left without drama. We collected our duplicates and signed the forms. The tech handed over a sealed envelope. "Keep this off your home network." I tucked it away and felt the weight. Paranoia had become strategy, not fear. Outside the station, we paused on the steps. Tires hissed by and voices layered the street. Lucia checked both shoulders and angled toward me. "Clean break," she said, soft but decisive. I believed her because I believed myself. The final message arrived as we crossed the lot. Unknown again, thinner tone, almost pleading. He wants you back on his side. I stared at the words and unlocked delete. Then I hit block and watched the silence expand. We reached the curb and faced the night. No applause, no dramatic flourish, no hero shot. Just two people walking out with steadier legs. I felt the lie finally leave my throat. What replaced it was simple and strong,